It's on vinyl and vision.
My guest tonight is Rafay Rashid. Now, Rafay has created this project, Rodney Dangerous, and this album has just been released recently. He is also probably best known as the singer and songwriter for the band Ravi Shavi. But he is a very productive person and has a number of projects. Another one of his projects is called Happiness, which is basically like three-fourths of the band Deer Tick, with Rafay doing the lead. So I was really excited to speak with Rafay. Turns out that he's such a cool guy. I never got to meet him prior to this recording, so it was a really great conversation that we had. About the album Strawberry Jam by Animal Collective, which was a interesting learning experience for me because, as I discussed in the show, I didn't have a very good experience with that album when it originally came out, and I was kind of put off by it. I didn't really think I liked it. So part of the benefit of doing a show like this is that you actually get to revisit things and to experience things in a different light. And I'm actually thankful that Rafe made this suggestion for this record because now I actually really enjoy it. So I hope we can maybe share a little bit of that mutual experience. If you don't already know this record, maybe you'll go seek it out and listen to it wherever you may do that, and maybe you'll find that you enjoy it too. If you like Animal Collective Strawberry Jam, you may like Rodney Dangerous's Fantasies. If you like Rodney Dangerous, you may like Animal Collective. So I encourage you to go listen to all the music wherever you find it, wherever you find your music, and wherever you purchase it. By all means, purchase this double vinyl because it's a great party record. Because any record you pull the sleeve out and it's printed right on it that the party starts here is a good record. Rafael also has a new release from Ravi Shavi, a relatively new release, which is called Special Hazards, which I also purchased, but only on the digital form for right now. That will be out on vinyl soon. So I encourage you guys to buy that when it's available. Follow Rafae wherever you have your accounts. He's on all the social medias, and that way you can find out more about that record when it's ready. And yeah, great talk. I never met Rafe before this conversation, before this recording, and he's a cool guy. I mean, I knew he was going to be a cool guy, but just the manner in which he has such concise and clear, eloquent thoughts about this record was really eye opening for me in a lot of regards, and on all the different topics that we've touched on. So, without further ado, let's just get into the show. I'd like to say thank you very much for tuning in, and we encourage you to please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and then rate and review even. If you know how to do that, that's super simple. You'll figure it out. I know you can. I know you can do it. If you're watching the video, at the end of the video, I actually am incorporating a very, very short segment of some music that my son made. Music by Job. It's called Running Out of Time. It's only a few seconds long, but can't use any copyrighted music for the video, so I figured, let me see if he has stuff I can use, and he actually does. He's doing pretty good. Very, very proud of him. So stay tuned for that if you're watching. All right, gotta get out of here. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Wonderful.
It's good seeing you, man.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
I didn't know who I was going to get tonight because you're a chameleon. It seems like from all the research I've did about you, you like always have these different looks about you.
Yeah, for sure. I've been told that before. I guess I try to embrace that as much as I can.
Yeah. I mean, I used to kind of do stuff like that. I just don't anymore.
I just like to go through changes every now and then. Just like it just feels like you're kind of like a chameleon, you know, like kind of like just change up your look, kind of like throw people off a little bit, especially with like a public persona like yourself, being a musician and you know, having so many projects. That's another thing I need to ask you about. I only found out last week about like Rodney Dangerous.
Awesome. Yeah, super pumped on that project. It's been in the works for, I want to say it actually, we started recording it. I remember we started tracking it the night that Trump got elected. And it, you know, it had nothing to do with that, but then it ended up being that presidency found its way thematically into the album, kind of imbued it with a sense of, I guess, dystopia. And, you know, and the album came out and then Trump's out. So I kind of see that entire presidency was like, during that time, I was deep in the head of Rodney, which was almost a persona. And it's, I don't want to say it's a concept album, but it does sort of, I tried to channel this sort of character for that album. And it was definitely, it's definitely something I'm super proud of in terms of branching out as an artist and a musician. Some of the sounds on there really branching out from just straightforward rock and roll.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what I found. I mean, I would completely agree with that statement. I mean, and that's like, I imagine it's an amazing feeling for you to kind of have some different piece of work that's like, you know, probably shows some side of you and like the eclecticism that you might have in like your music collection and, you know, stuff that inspires you. Because you know, this album, from what I've heard of it, is actually probably like a closer kin to this album that you chose this evening, the Animal Collective Strawberry Jam, than what I knew of Ravi Shavi. You know, it's just like, you know, and not that these things ever have to be, you know, coincidental. Like, I mean, you know, inspiration comes from all places and it can inspire in all different types of ways. But I think I see the connection better with Rodney Dangerous and this album that you chose, more so than Ravi Shavi. That's all.
I think that's totally sound. Yeah, definitely more experimental, trying to draw a bit on more just on a wider net, if you will, of influences.
Yeah, and it's executed great. I mean, it's such a great album. You know, I put it on as it's instantly like drawn to it, just being like, oh, this is going to be a fun party record.
Awesome, thanks so much.
So, so it took, what did it take 4 years? Because it just came out like at the end of 2020, didn't it?
Yeah, it came out I think December 20th. Yeah, I want to say we were pretty much done tracking it by late 2017, early 2018. And then there was, you know, just a little bit of time in between that. I mean, I guess about a year planning the release, finding the label, and just sort of finalizing the cover art, getting some of the adjacent stuff ready, like the music video. Yeah, we spent a good deal of time actually working on the cover art and the vinyl record itself, because we saw it as more of like an art project, I suppose, than just a standard artifact of a band, you know, because it's just a recording project. It doesn't really play out, barring a couple of performances where I sort of blended Ravi Shavi with Rodney Dangerous and called it, I think, Ravi Dangerous for a couple shows.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I saw something about that. Did you perform that, like this specifically what you're speaking about, the blending of Ravi Shavi and Rodney Dangerous in where was it? Was it Singapore?
In Shanghai, yeah.
Shanghai. It was a museum show?
It was, yeah. It was at an art museum in Shanghai called Rock Bund Art Museum, which was wild. Yeah, that came about. So that was I believe, only the second time I had sort of included or incorporated the Rodney project into any sort of live show. The other time we did it was at the Columbus Theater, right here in Providence. Yeah, so the art museum gig was a programming that an artist that I have been working under, let's say, for the past decade in sort of human activated works. So not necessarily performance art, but there's some element of that where there's a human as part of the exhibition and interacting with a visitor. So that artist actually became the curator for this 2-week event at this art museum. So he invited me as a featured artist as part of that. So there was artists from all over the world, mostly non-strictly visual artists. There was like dancers, performance artists, musicians. And so, yeah, I brought that project along, and we were only there for 4 days. Our guitarist actually was there for 2 nights because he flew back to go to a wedding in Providence. So he had even a wilder, shorter, condensed experience. But yeah, it was a bit of a dream. The show itself was, that we played a couple. The first one was to a seated audience of art patrons and businessmen, and it was within an already sort of done up art exhibition with these live trees inside this museum. So we had to sort of break the ice of the sort of antiseptic museum, sterile environment.
Oh yeah, because it's wild music. I mean, it seems like a little strange to try to keep it into confines of a gallery space. I mean, acoustically speaking, I don't think that those places usually do well for shows, but obviously this is something more interactive,
For sure. I mean, in a way, it was really cool because I guess from the beginning, my first band, it was called Yelling Game, and we would play these venues that we felt almost like we were infiltrating the space a bit, and we would play these Christian youth centers, which is probably not that uncommon to people starting out in high school, because you can't get a gig at a regular bar venue. Maybe you're not old enough. So that was always kind of part of the excitement growing up, playing in shows, almost feeling like maybe we're not supposed to be playing a show here, and that sort of fueled the whole fun of it.
Yeah. Almost that dirty feeling. It's just the cops might show up and shut this down, I think.
Exactly. You get away with it. We used to actually show up with my band Yelling Game. We only played it, I think, when the living room was still around back in the day. Yeah.
And wait, so where was this? Was this in Rhode Island?
Yeah. So I basically grew up in the suburbs of Rhode Island in Warwick. I was born in Pakistan, in Islamabad. Then moved with my family to New York at a very young age in '95. So I was 5 years old. And then my dad got a job in Rhode Island through Brown University, and he was also working at a hospital here. So yeah, I grew up in Warwick.
Oh, cool. So what was music like growing up in the house?
My dad, I guess, was always playing. He was really, oddly enough, of course there was Pakistani and Indian music and old classical stuff like that. But there was also surprisingly a good amount of classic rock and stuff from Europe as well. I mean, there's the big ones that are probably true of a lot of immigrant dads, but also just dads in general. Pink Floyd, Dire Straits,
Led Zeppelin,
Purple, Santana, Gypsy Kings.
That's cool.
But yeah, it wasn't super. It's stuff I could still listen to and appreciate parts of all that stuff now. And I think when you're someone who's not super into music, but my dad would dance a lot. Him and his friends would be dancing in the living room, playing music pretty loud. And we just, the kids would be hanging out doing their own thing, and the moms would be in the kitchen or adjacent to the kitchen. Very old school in a weird way.
Yeah. Would they be dancing to this, classic rock music?
Yeah, Santana. I remember Black Magic Woman was huge, always playing. Got a black magic woman, and they'd be doing these crazy. My dad's I actually inherit most of my dance moves on stage from him, doing these surly, not necessarily super masculine moves,
Right.
And yeah, that was just fun. I just remember everyone cracking up and egging each other on. And he was sort of like the life of the party, I guess. And I just saw that and probably gravitated to where it's at a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll end it there. What was your first instrument that you learned?
Well, I want to say, like, I really wanted to just sing. I always wanted to be a front man. So, like before I was in 5th grade or something. We started a band. Nobody knew. I think it was called something stupid like Pants or something. And nobody knew how to play an instrument. But I remember like we kind of somehow somebody acquired a drum kit or like a makeshift kit, and somebody eventually ended up getting a guitar. I personally, like beyond singing, picked up the guitar. I think I got my first guitar like in 8th grade, and then didn't actually start playing it or writing anything on it until the end of my high school band, because my guitarist went on to do something else, or like he just stopped being as into guitar. So I just needed music to sing to, you know? So I use it always as a sort of like an accompaniment songwriting tool, as opposed to like, oh, I really want to get good. Like I never practiced scales or took lessons or anything.
And so what were you listening to like around that time, like when you were late teen?
Like late teens or when I first got into music, because those two things are very different, I think.
Okay, like when you first started, yeah.
When I first like was able to buy my own music, you know, like, or not even with my own money, but like, you know, like
choosing your own
titles. Yeah, I listened to a lot of stuff that I would make fun of now, to be fair. You know, which I think is true of a lot of people. But there was like, you know, I grew up in the age around skateboarding where you had like bands like on the less well, or the ones that didn't age as well, I guess I would lump in like bands like Limp Bizkit or like Korn or Kid Rock or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas just like, you know, I think, but then, you know, there was also stuff alongside that, which I do think I'm still sort of drawn to, and I would still revisit, like System of a Down or like Eminem or Dr. Dre, like, you know, all those people that were big TRL top 20 things. There's some good stuff in there. But then I think right around 9th or 10th grade, I started getting actually into music that I became sort of formative and like reflect my taste now. Like punk music. Punk was like, early punk music was a big influence for me in terms of two bands that really stuck with me, that I think stick with a lot of people, are The Clash and Talking Heads. And then I listened to that, like Devo. And then I got more into the classics, you know, like just delved further into Bowie, Queen, everybody like that. And that sort of led me into 10th, 11th grade, which is into like underground indie music, which I just remember it being in 9th grade, I think, or the end of 9th going into 10th grade. My uncle introduced me to the Arcade Fire, TV on the Radio, Animal Collective.
Your uncle must be a young uncle.
He was, well, he's also an artist who I work with a lot as well. So he was always into film and music, and he was living in New York. He must have been around the age of like 34, 35. But he was immersed, so he was like friends with some of these people. Like he was friends with Tunde, who was the lead singer of TV on the Radio. And weird. He also works with people now who are like managing the Arcade Fire. And so like I came to actually like a lot of my heroes I actually ended up like meeting down the road in some more like familiar fashion. But yeah, he was just like, it just dropped it like, you know, like a fucking amazing package of this whole other world where it's like no longer is it like huge labels or like the TV telling you what to hear, or even like huge posters of like rock gods, even like the Clash, like were a different thing. These are like people, oh, they're oh, they kind of dress like me, or they dress like my uncle. They just like just everyday people, and they're like not necessarily like they don't necessarily seem like they're being filtered in from another universe, you know?
Yeah, these rock stars, like these kind of like weird golden gods that seem like an unobtainable thing to do.
Exactly. And I think that was crucial too, like in terms of my own understanding, or like my own ambition for starting a band and stuff. Like it started to feel more like real, as like something I could do as an adult, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the album you chose, I invited you here to talk about an album that was informative to your style and your your influence, and you chose Animal Collective's Strawberry Jam. This makes more sense to me now. I didn't know your age, so I was just like, oh, this is like a more modern record. You know, it's just like, I mean, not to say that there's not any good modern music, but I don't know too much about this band, and as a matter of fact, I kind of like wrote them off when I first heard them, like around this time when this came out in 2007. Like, I didn't have a good experience with it. It was like I was working at a restaurant downtown, and some of the hip kids that I worked with were getting really into this band, and I believe it was actually this record specifically. So they kind of overdid it for me because, like, you're in that work environment, the music's playing over speakers, it's not a good listening environment. And then you end up hearing that same song, I don't know, maybe even like 3 or 4 times a night. And I don't know, I found it grating. And I got really annoyed. And then I heard that they were like an electronic band, and they only like played off laptops and shit. And I was just like, well, fuck this. like this isn't rock music. And so yeah, I just never really listened to it. And then you brought it to my attention, and suggested it for the show, and I was just like, shit, I have to listen to that now.
Yeah, did you hear it?
I definitely have gained a new respect for it. Like, I actually really like this record now.
Amazing. Love that.
Yeah. What was your first experience with this record like?
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, I was in high school when this sort of in my head was almost like a trifecta, but I think it's more than that. It was TV on the radio, it was Animal Collective, it was Arcade Fire, and it was Hot Chip. Those 4 bands, I think, just stuck out in terms of they were all introduced to me at the same time. And I think I fell in love with all of them equally. Animal Collective just struck an immediate chord with me because I think it was the album Sung Tongs, which was their second album. And then, so they had Sung Tongs. They only had one album prior to that, which is an album I don't really even like that much to this day, because it's just sort of like an embryo, I think, of their band, what would become. So I got really into Sung Tongs in high school, I think around 9th grade. And it was very like sort of tribal. There was sort of like a looseness and an experimentating sort of vibe going on or sort of experimenting vibe that like I just related to, honestly, like getting high and making up random like improv songs with my friends, where like we just sort of like yelp and make up words and like start just sort of like having this like weird communal fun, quasi kind of humorous, funny experience. And we'd like record these tracks and then be like, okay, we're recording, have no idea what we're going to record, but let's just like beat on some shit and start yelling and make up a language. We had this game that me and my friend played where I'd start singing a note like, and then he'd start following my note, and then I'd just keep on elongating it and making weird sounds out of that note, and he'd match that note. And we would just crack up, and we weren't always high doing this, but we were sometimes. And so when I heard Sung Tongs, I was like, what? Like, this is a legitimate record and they're doing that. Like, they're just like making up like words. And you could just feel this sort of like crazy energy of somebody just banging on a floor tom while somebody like yelps for a bit, and then they start using this sort of like suggestive poetic imagery with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just remember to answer your question, I was in the back seat of my older sister's boyfriend's car. They were in the front, and we were driving to, I think, Maine. It was a really beautiful sunny day on the highway, and Strawberry Jam had just come out. We got it on CD, probably at Newbury Comics or something. And I was probably high, but I was, just laying in the back seat. I just remember, I think I probably started off in a seated position, and then Peace Bone, the first song, hit, and it's just this like crazy, like sort of machine sound, like synthesizer, where I wasn't really ever really listening to synthesizer music or anything like that. But then there's the familiar voice of Avi Ter doing his crazy yelps, and it's like not singing, and these crazy lyrics about a peace bone got found in a dinosaur wing. And this like whole childlike essence of that band mixed with the more polished propeller of synthesizers and drum machines with their tribal element of percussion. I just had to recline. I just remember sitting in the back, and I'm like, okay, no longer can I like sit and listen to this. I'm going to stare at the clouds, like whirring past on 95, whatever highway we were on at that time, and just listen to that whole album so loud. I just remember I just kept on telling him, my sister's boyfriend, to put it louder and louder till he just cranked it, like until he's like, yeah, you want more, motherfucker? And I'm like, no, this is good. This is good. And there's very few albums where I've had like a quasi like religious feeling experience while listening to it. So that's why I picked this album, I think.
Cool. Well, you know what? Let's share that experience with everybody else. Let's give Peace Bone a try. I had to get to the chorus where he hits those notes.
Yeah, the high note.
Yeah, I can't do it. I'm not even gonna attempt it. I'll fucking embarrass
myself. Neither will I. We'll spare our audience here.
So yeah, I mean, like that, like really, really sitting down with this record for the first time, even being hesitant, and like especially like, under the headphones, like, really kind of sitting down and kind of being quiet with it for a little bit. I would say that I was almost at that level that you described. Only because I might not have been high at the time, but I have since listened to it high, and it's great, and it's like fantastic. But just the way that comes in like that, just like it's that weird noise you're talking about, and just like how that beat like just turns a little bit, and then it's like that steady pulse, and it's pretty amazing.
Totally. And like when his vocal comes in, and then there's like sort of the demonic low register that also like whooshes in, it's like immediately just is like aware, I think, also of your attention. I just think it's a perfect record for that sort of time too, where people's attention drifts all the time. It was kind of hard not to pay attention to it. The like confusing part about the music, well, I mean it's all kind of pretty confusing because it's pretty innovative, really. Is our lyrics as well. The lyrics are kind of weird and silly and nuts, like they're kind of all over the place. Lyrically, I think that's a thread all throughout Strawberry Jam. It's like it was almost a game trying to make sense of what it means. I don't even think necessarily in like a trying to crack the code type of way. But that was part of the fun listening to it, was these like very obviously evasive and evocative lyrics that are, I think Avi's always more about the like the sort of expressionistic imagery where it's almost like a dreamscape, and that often does refer to this it almost like returns to this childlike point of view, but it's about something really dark and twisted.
So the next song is Unsolved Mysteries. Let's listen to a little bit of that. There it is. That's my favorite line in the song.
Which one is it again?
What's pain? What's sadness anyway? It's not crying like a child.
Mm. They have a sort of a strange element. I mean, that song in particular reminds me. I actually used. So I was really into making my own little short films and movies when I was in high school, and used that song in a scene along with. I think it was literally a movie. It had nothing. Couldn't be further away from. Just a direct reference to that song. But it worked, and I think there's an element of it was basically about it was very True Detective-y. It was about two detectives who are infiltrating this space with this sort of deranged person living inside. And I used that song, and I think and it worked perfectly. It just speaks to how it can sort of color or match any sort of experience you're going through.
I don't know if it's because it's a newer record or if it's just I'm not looking in the right places, but had a really hard time finding anything conclusive about the recording of this record. All I know is that it was recorded in the desert.
Yeah, it was in Arizona.
Yeah, it was Wave Lab Studios in Tucson. Have you been through Tucson, on tour at all, or?
No, but I actually recorded an album in Bisbee, Arizona recently. That is sort of an adjacent project to Rodney Dangerous. So very familiar with recording in that sort of environment. Bisbee is directly on the border of Mexico and Arizona. So it's very sort of surreal. I could see how it would. I mean, I think Animal Collective is most of their records were written about New York. There's a lot of references to New York in this album, but I think they purposefully wanted to take themselves out of that environment into a more surreal place like the desert.
Yeah. I've never been through the desert, but kind of knowing a little bit about some other artists Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age in particular, and his desert sessions. There's always been this vibe about things that happen in the desert, and I've never been, but so you did some recording in that atmosphere. First of all, what project was it that you were doing there?
It's a project that is sort of a sequel to Rodney Dangerous in a way, but there was it also incorporated. I was doing an artist residency there, so it's sort of trying to work out some of my own more experimental solo projects into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the desert thing, I found it very conducive to getting lost in a singular sort of vision, so you're not constantly reminded of everybody else's world. You can sort of just, if you're trying to imagine something and live in that space for a while, the sort of constructed reality, the desert seems like a good or was for me at least a good sort of blank canvas to fill in. Right.
Now, we were talking about the desert earlier. You said that you were recording out there for a separate project. Which project was that?
So I have several projects going right now. So that the desert project is for an album that may or may not end up being part of a Ravi Shavi repertoire. It may be an extension of the Rodney Dangerous thing. I'm still sort of working with those tracks, but I do have I have some ideas for it. But there's some other releases that I have, namely one that is sort of taking precedence right now. So I've sort of put that on the back burner for now.
Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, you keep busy.
Yeah, but I guess I've been busy just regular demoing and also just getting this next album with I'm working with my collaborator and drummer in Happiness and Deer Tick, Dennis Ryan, and we've been hard at work on this album that we're gonna hopefully put out by the end of the year, depending on who's releasing it and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was. I found that interesting too because so I purchased your latest Ravi Shavi record.
Yeah.
Special Hazards. Yeah, and that's a great one. And I didn't know because of the artwork on that cover. I didn't know if that was the one or had any relation to being in the desert because I don't know where that photo was taken or what that image is.
Yeah, so technically, I guess it does because it was taken kind of around there and by someone who is a resident of Bisbee, Daniela Dawson, who also directed the video for Rodney Dangerous. So, yeah, I think she had shown me some photos when I was looking around and trying to come up with ideas for cover art for Special Hazards. I saw that one image that you took, which was part of a much larger photo shoot. And I believe, I don't know, I don't think it's shot in Bisbee, but it's around there.
Okay. All right. Well, we should probably move on to the next song,
Sure.
which is Chores. So weird. It's so maddening how he does that.
Yeah, immediately grabbing though. I mean, I noticed that you and I, like, as soon as you hit play, like, had this smile, like
Yeah.
we almost wanted to laugh at it, but it's like laughing with it, for me at least.
It brings a good vibe for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I tried
Yeah.
watching a little bit of a video too around this era to kind of see like what their live performance was like, because I, as I had been told, I guess incorrectly, was that these guys just play laptops. And I was just like,
Right.
that doesn't sound like it'd be very interesting to watch at all. But I was wrong. They actually had a couple of instruments, guitar, keys, like some synths, some drums, some percussion, which I thought was essential. Because like listening to this album, I was just like, this has got some like great drum work, like some really good percussive elements. It's just like, I would hope that they aren't using some preset loop thing on a computer that making these noises, I was going to ask if you had seen these guys perform at any point.
Yeah, I've seen them twice, both in very weird contexts, though. One was a free show at South Street Seaport in New York, and it was during their phase. I believe it was after, maybe it was right before Merriweather Post Pavilion, which was their album after Strawberry Jam, which is when they really sort of started to cross over to mainstream, or like sort of on the outskirts of that with their song My Girls. And they were in this phase where they would try out material for their following, whatever would be their next album. And they did this, I guess, for a few years. So they would play maybe like 30 seconds of something from Strawberry Jam, and then it would be a weird version of it. But then they'd start like going into these long trance-like things into this other song, which then I would recognize later. Oh, they played these songs when we went and saw them, when I heard Merriweather.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to For Reverend Green.
Cool.
I just kind of want to listen to the whole thing now, but
yeah, that one makes my hair stand a little bit.
That one certainly gives me some feels.
Yeah, I think his delivery is so effective in that.
Yeah,
it's hard to deny that he's feeling the song.
For sure, I think that nails it for that song. I mean, like as you were saying, I feel the same way. It's just like it's definitely a emotional, like a cathartic sounding song. It really kind of hits me in a soft spot.
Yeah, for real. And it's a journey. I think when I remember that song specifically, when I was in that backseat of that car, it just cemented it as like a no longer a cerebral experience, but like a very visceral experience where you feel the song on your skin. Right. And even just hearing it through the laptop, through your tablet right now, it's having that effect. So that's how powerful memory is.
That's the magic of a good song,
Yeah.
Let's go on to another one. Let's do Fireworks. This is another one. This is another one where I would definitely say this is probably one of the more popular ones off the record. Like,
yeah, I think so.
It definitely hits me in another equally sensitive spot.
Yeah, for real. I think this song, I mean, there's so many good elements about it. I think one of my favorite things is that it waits for a while. I think about like minutes into the song is when the catchiest part of the song happens. And it's like when it goes to, I've been eating with a good friend who said a genie made me out of the earth's skin, but in spite of her, she's my birth kin. Yeah. That stuff, I don't know. I remember hearing that and just being like, oh, cool. And that stuck with me for a while in songwriting in general, was this idea of saving, of like what I call now is like a true chorus, where there's like maybe some mini choruses before, but the real good one, you wait till way later in the song. Yeah. Almost like, a movie where you like save the most engaging part to, the third act.
Right. and it can be as repetitive as you want because it's just so good that I can just repeat this and people would love it.
Yeah, and then you wait, you know, when you go back to the song, you wait the whole time in anticipation of that 3-minute mark. But that makes the first 3 minutes actually pretty fun, like kind of a suspense ride.
Yeah, it must be really difficult for you to like, especially with all these projects that you're doing. Like how do you like how do you hit the finish button on that? Like how do you process that? Okay, this is done. Like I'm willing to put this out on record now, and then that's it. I'm never going to change this thing again.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, I guess it's great to work with somebody who's not only engineering it, but also producing it in some sense, you know, so because they're doing not only the creative element of it and making stylistic and aesthetic decisions, but they're also doing the grunt work. So how long are we going to do this grunt work for, of like EQing and compressing and all that stuff. So certain point they're going to hit their limit, and hopefully you can trust that person, you know. But if I was engineering, that's why I've never released really anything that I've engineered myself, because barring one release, I put out like 65 songs as a solo album, but under like the Chevy Bandcamp, just because I like didn't feel like putting it on a hard drive, and was like, oh, I'll never share these songs because I know I'm engineering them and they're not going to end up on another album. So it's like, let's just put them all out because I'm not going to be able to edit this myself, you know.
So you can hear this music somewhere?
Yeah, it's on Ravi Shavi's Bandcamp. It's called Bored in Paradise.
Oh, okay. Why don't I feel
basically like 65 demo quality sounding songs that I engineered and like basically played everything on myself.
Yeah.
There's songs that I just didn't want to never put out, but didn't want to put out on a like a proper release, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can't hurt to have songs. I mean, build that catalog, you know?
Yeah, what's it gonna hurt? I mean, if someone's like, you know, I'm not overly precious about output, because I feel like you run into the trap of, you know, I know some really talented people who are like working on their first album for like over 5 years, and it's cool and I love their work, but it's like, I personally can't, I can't sit on material for that long, you know, because then I'll just obsess over it and you'll never know when it's done. Yeah, because it could always be better.
That's exactly it. Your mindset is like how you even accomplish having a large discography is that you just like, you know, keep on working on stuff, but then just reach a point where it's just like, okay, that's good, and then put it out. It seems like they were kind of contrary to the whole idea of pop. Like they don't really want to grasp onto this idea of like, you know, having, you know, pop elements in their music, but it's kind of unavoidable. Ultimately, like if you're going to be a popular band, you have to kind of succumb to incorporating pop-like elements into your music, you know?
Right.
So
they've resisted a lot of stuff. I know that they turned down a bunch of like major commercial licenses for their songs.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a definite, I think, deliberate attempt on their part to distance themselves from like commercial mainstream ideals.
Well, so what is your how do you feel about pop music in general these days?
Well, I guess there's like I have two different understandings of it. There's pop music as like an aesthetic that I feel like indie bands and even bands who are not popular embody, you know, and I think a lot of the stuff that I try to write is in a pop vein, but it's not necessarily, it's not popular by any means, you know. Talking like, you know, we're talking about what's like on the top 20.
Well, I mean, like, you kind of touched on it because you obviously acknowledge the fact that, you know, some of the projects that you do have a pop element to the way that you make them, like the way that you write these songs. But yeah, I'm thinking more about like like you kind of can't help but to have some pop elements making their way into all genres of music, you know. And it's like if you think about noise rock, which, you know, I'm a pretty big fan of. And there is that ability. Like, like I really love Arab on Radar. And I remember when their album Yahweh the Highway came out, I remember feeling like this music is weird, and it's hard to kind of like get a groove into, like, like it's challenging music and it's abrasive. But at the same time, I could start to hear it and kind of hear the same thing like when I'm doing with Animal Collective now, where it's just like I hear these little things inside of the music which add a pop element, whether it be like the beat that it's at or the like kind of some repetitive groove about some of the riff, like some of the guitar riffs and some of those songs. It's just like these are like there's pop in there, but it doesn't sound like pop music,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It makes me think. I mean, I think Eric Paul is a really talented dude.
Oh yeah.
And we actually put he was the first person when he was running his label Anchor Brain to sort of put Ravi Shavi on his website and carry our first record, our first CD on Anchor Brain. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of like, as experimental as he as an artist is, and like even bands like, I'm trying to think like Daughters or even like Lightning Bolt, like some of the bigger experimental bands to come out of Providence. There are certain like pop elements. I think there's probably some innate universality that these artists are trying to get at, Right. And I think that's a trend of experimental music when pop sort of commingles with experimentation or avant-garde tendencies. There's something interesting happening there in the sense that it seems to not be experimentation for itself, and for the sake of experimenting, or for the sake or being weird for the sake of being weird, Mm-hmm. So when those two things collide, it seems like, oh, we're doing something because we still want you to be drawn to this as an audience, or we still want to connect with people, but we want to connect with people in a different way. We don't want to just be making feedback loops and like doing whatever, like lacerating oneself, which is definitely like a thing, and that's cool too. But like imagine if that was it, and if there was just like super pop music and then just feedback loop, so I think, yeah, a lot of what we hear is just like a meeting in the middle, and I love it. I love when pop sensibilities can sort of be subverted. It almost reminds me of like a microcosm of the mentality of like changing an institution within it, like a revolution within the confines of the system,
Right. All right, I'm gonna hit Winter Wonderland. Just a little taste of that song. All I've got to say about this song is that it reminds me of They Might Be Giants. It's just
cool.
Not as educational.
I never got into them.
No?
As in, like, I do not that I don't like them. I couldn't name a song by them.
I can barely name a song, but I mean, I've definitely heard a lot of it. It's just not as educational as They Might Be Giants is. That's all. Yeah, I think just the association with me and like, kind of like thinking it kind of sounds a little bit like They Might Be Giants, kind of a little bit of a turnoff for me. But
it didn't age that well for me. But when I first heard it, I think I was just really into the sort of fast-paced delivery.
Oh, yeah, the chorus is kind of like, do you not believe in fantasy because it gets you down? If you don't believe it's raining, I won't tell you that it's raining. Do you not believe it's raining just because it gets you down? And stuff like that. And it's really fast the way he sings it. So it's kind of hard to understand when you're listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, what is one thing you have a hard time believing in?
What is one thing I have a hard time believing in? I mean, in a lot of ways, like self-help culture is a new age self-help culture is, I guess it's a broad territory, but it's something that I want to embrace and try to actively do. It's like work on myself, work on my health, and constantly try to keep a positive mental attitude. But the way in which it's been commercialized and sort of like, I feel weaponized against us in a way, through, just new age books and Oprah and The View and commercials selling you all these things. It seems like they want to fill a void. They want to create, like, they make a business out of trying to fill a spiritual void.
Yes, that's it. It's making it a business, isn't it? Isn't it putting the price tag behind the premium on health?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking from a more of a self-help stance, where I mean that could even apply to the actual medical field.
Totally.
It's like just how these major corporations, so it seems, don't even care if we really live, as long as they make their money off of us.
One of the problematic things about this whole thing, I think, is the focus on the individual shifts the focus from the sort of structure that creates the individual, or the sort of, like, let's not look at how our society is run. Let's fix the individual person. It's not, there isn't something wrong with the way our educational system is structured. There's something wrong with a student who can't sit down and listen to the teacher. So let's feed them some pills and get them going.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with you. We're gonna move on to cuckoo.
Cool. Yeah. Speaking of going cuckoo.
Yeah. Well, this kind of ties right into what we were talking about, kind of, like this
Totally.
overwhelming
Little kids can't play with things that have died.
Yeah. Again, like you were saying before, lyrically, this album can get a little heavy, a little dark. The only question I have in regards to this, because obviously the song is kind of emoting this sense of, I don't know, depression, anxiety, I guess, maybe a little bit of, and generally going crazy, I guess, and to say it in a layman's term. When you're like, if you feel that, when you have your moments when you feel like you're going a little crazy, because we all have those moments, what is a way that you self-soothe?
It's a good question. I guess, I mean, there's the standard stuff of like just doing a bunch of push-ups or like running around, just like try to physically move your way out of it. Yeah, you try to just physically move your way out of it. I mean, sometimes it's helpful to literally just shut down, though, and not try to power through it, and just like and feel it and watch TV.
Acknowledge what you're feeling and how it makes you feel. And
yeah, I mean, and I feel like there's like three paths. You can either like power your way through it and like try to like fake it till you make it kind of thing, or you can really just like sit in it and just like collapse on a couch and watch TV, and just sit in it, but not, and that's kind of neutral. Or you can go the destructive route and like go pick up a bunch of drugs and alcohol and get into a fight. So like those are the three options, and I've done all three of them. But I've been trying to not do the third one and just do the first two if possible.
Right. All right, so we're gonna touch on the last song of the record, simply titled Derek. That's kind of it for that song. Kind of like a nursery rhymish, right?
Yeah, I love it.
The only thing I can think about this song is that, this song reminds me of Vampire Weekend.
Yeah.
Is that another band that you kind of like got into around the same time period? Because I think that they were kind of like around the same era, right?
Yeah, I think Vampire Weekend came just a little bit after, and I didn't get into them that much. For some reason, I always felt they were like a little too like clean cut or something for me, for my taste. I never
Yeah.
give it, just seemed a little too polished. But I could definitely see in the sense of like very light, whimsical, indie pop sort of leaning music.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Vampire Weekend was never really a band that I really liked either. So is there a band or a song that you initially couldn't stand that you now give more credit to that you can think of?
That's a good question. You know what? I'm gonna go be controversial here and say the Beatles.
Just in general, the Beatles. That's a big work of like,
Yeah,
they
the
had so many
Beatles.
different kind of things they did throughout the short lifespan they had.
Yeah, I mean the band itself. I don't know why, but I think there was something about like when it was probably right when got really into like independent music.
Mhm.
I see. I don't know if it was just that they were all around. It was just trying to be contrarian or something. But like the fact that everybody was calling these like four cheesy white guys with guitars what I saw. And my dad also like was like told me that they were like a boy band when I was growing up, and he was listening to like Cranking Deep Purple or something. It was like weird. So I think I had a skewed idea coming in to just the Beatles, and I was like kind of like when people said they were the best band in the world, I was like, what are you talking about? And then I came through my appreciation of just songwriting as a craft in general. I was like, oh wait, it makes total sense that they would be someone's favorite band. Right.
And then like it would probably take a while for the history of it, like that kind of the magnitude of like what they did historically speaking to rock music. Yeah, like it's the history of it that is hard to turn away and hard to deny. But I can see how some of it isn't like appealing musically. Like I actually don't really like their early period. I don't like the bubblegum rock stuff.
Yeah.
I when I listen to the Beatles, I listen to more of their experimental stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and I love them now. I think it went from like I don't see how they're the best of anything to like to just because I think just as a younger person wanting to be different and cool or something and be like, let me pick only obscure stuff to like,
Oh yeah, right. You gotta keep your hipster cred.
Right. And I didn't even as like a 14, 15-year-old. And now it's funny, it's all coming full circle because I was like, when you asked me what album to pick, I considered Strawberry Jam to be too mainstream. I was like, is that too mainstream? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, should I pick something way more obscure? But I was just like, I went with it because it just was undeniable, and I knew I couldn't. It was undeniable in its appeal to me when I first heard it, and still to this day. So,
I like that you managed to narrow it down like that.
Right. Yeah, picking one was definitely hard, but I just thought, also like in terms of its effect on me as a songwriter, I think it's something their approach is something that I'm actually like, I think forever just going to have to be stuck with because you can't turn it away once they've done something so like fun and also just so much of their own crazy impulses.
Well, what's the next thing in line? Like, what's the next project that's going to be coming out for you?
So it's this collaboration with Dennis Ryan. It's a piano album that I wrote when I didn't know how to play piano. I taught myself while writing the songs, and really excited about it. Dennis produced, engineered, is mixing it, and we're getting it mastered down in Nashville this month, and gonna have hopefully some labels try to talk to them and see if they will want to put it out. And by the end of this year, I hope it's out there. And then just keep Ravi Shavi is going to keep going. Lookers is going. Hopefully, Happiness will make a resurgence and start to play some shows.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, I hope to run into you somewhere out in the real world. hopefully
Yeah,
our show.
likewise. It seems like we're around the corner now, so let's see.
Yeah, I hope so, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking me to do it too. This has been a cool experience. I haven't done a long form interview about music like in this capacity about another record ever. So that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, what musician doesn't want to talk about a great record, you know?
Yeah, for real. It's good. It made me it definitely made me consider the direction that I've been trying to push in unconsciously, but to like sort of deliberately be put in that spot of being like, what were you attracted to so much? It just, just the idea of being more experimental and you going outside of the rock realm has been, I don't normally listen to just rock music. So the idea that I've been making just that is like, is this something, it was a cool experience to sort of get to that articulation in my mind via you asking me to do this.
Yeah.
And then more collective. So cool.
Yeah. I hope that it does that to whoever I speak to next, it's just like, I hope that that's the trend. Cause I'm kind of interested in the psychology behind this a little bit. And I think that that's exactly kind of what you're talking about a little bit.
Right. And then for that to like articulate in an artist's brain to influence what they're going to do in the future is cool. Just a ripple effect kind of thing. So yeah, definitely on it. Hopefully this was an all right interview for you.
No, man, it's a great time, man. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, best of luck to you. I hope to see you out there, and hope you can play some shows soon.
All right. Thanks so much, James.
No problem, man. Thank you for talking.